Aloha. Sorry about the shirt malfunction. Really grateful to be here today. I have actually a very simple concept to suggest, and that is that in the moment we're in now, it's time for a declaration of interdependence rather than a declaration of independence. So the idea is simple. I'll elaborate on it in a second, but I wanted to forewarn folks that I'm going to do something a little bit different, which is ask people to join in action. Okay, so I'm going to be building up to that call to action, so be prepared for it. But let me start here. It might seem like an odd place to start, but what I want to start this talk with is a mention of how remarkable human optimism is. We are a remarkably optimistic species. We do some crazy things, and we expect them to turn out for the best. Okay, and inviting a bear to Thanksgiving is not the only one. Okay, we build cities on fault lines that are prone to quake. We build them in areas that are prone to flooding. We build them on the slopes of active volcanoes. And in the known path of hurricanes. And as optimists, we're quick to forget the disasters of our past. Already the images of Sendai are starting to fade for us. Let me also say that islanders are probably the most optimistic among humans. This is the disaster profile for Hawaii, courtesy of State Civil Defense. All those disasters that I mentioned, they're right up there, okay? We have built a civilization in the middle of the largest ocean on the planet, thousands of miles from help. And to top it all off, we've built an economy on oil. 12 billion barrels a year to float our island economy, okay? If that's not optimism, I don't know what is. Island living is tough. It takes a different view of the world. It takes advanced citizenship. And I want to talk about just a couple of examples of how islanders have to look at the world differently to live well on islands together. 3 things I want to cover. One is how we treat resources, how we treat nature, and how we treat each other. First, resources. This way of looking at resources does not work on an island. Okay? This is a way of looking at resources that treats them as disposable, as inexhaustible, as disconnected from us, and that does not respect the work and steps that go into making a resource available to us. Okay? This is a way of treating resources that works well on an island. It respects resources as local, as finite, as in need of stewardship and tending to. It's a view to maximizing reuse and making resources go as far as we can. How we treat nature. This way of treating nature does not work on an island. Okay? This way of treating nature suggests that nature is something that must make way for us, that is to be controlled and dominated, that it is strictly for our use and consumption. This way of relating to nature is what's required for good island living. Yeah? It's a relationship with nature, a practice of communing with nature on a regular basis, of respecting its power and fragility. This way of dealing with people does not work on islands, because we have to live with each other, right? So every dispute threatens to devolve into a permanent rift in our society. Every conflict threatens to devolve into a civil war. Yeah? So we know we have to treat each other with a different kind of respect, even in the midst of some of our most heated disputes. This way of dealing with each other is what is required for good island living. Yeah? An embracing of each other, a respect for each other's customs and sacred things, and a recognition that if we're going to challenge each other, if we're going to argue with each other, that the way to persuade and to lead is by our example and not by force. Yeah? So this custom was the custom of one people of Hawaii, and now it's become the custom of all peoples of Hawaii, right? First person led by their example, took off the slippers, now everybody takes off the slippers. Yeah? Those are just a couple of examples of what is required of islanders to live well in this space together. Now, the sad truth is that all of those practices that I mentioned that do not work well on islands, we do them all here. Yeah? Thankfully, we still have a strong foothold in those things that do work well on islands, but those ways of life, those traditions, those pieces of wisdom that we have, they're starting to fade, and they're starting to give way to some of those practices that don't work well on islands. And so to bring it back to the idea that I'd like to suggest, I guess what I'd like to suggest is it's time for us to reaffirm our commitment to live as is required for us to live well on islands. And what's required, again, is not so much a declaration of our independence, we're good at that, but a reaffirmation of our interdependence with people, with place, and with the way we produce and consume things. For islanders, a declaration is a little bit different. Okay? To my mind, the way island people communicate with each other is not so much by our talk, but by our walk. Okay? So let our declaration not be about words that describe our values or our principles, but let our declaration be about the actions and the way we live, and let people know us by that versus our statements. So I want to suggest a specific declaration of our interdependence. Okay? And I want to start, instead of words that describe who we are, we the people, start with these words: we will. Okay? And a commitment to specific steps, specific changes in our own life that reaffirm our interdependence and model this way of life for each other and for other people. A declaration of interdependence in my mind has three components, three changes that may seem simple at first, but if we challenge ourselves to truly live them fully, we'll find that the effect is transformative on ourselves and other people. First piece of the declaration: eat homegrown at least once a week. Specific steps, let's make it concrete. Eat something that you grow or catch instead of something bought from the store. Strive for that at least once a week. Help build an edible community garden or school garden. Buy at least 2 items from local farmers every week. If we strive for this, if each of us in this room strives for this over the course of the next year, it'll transform the way we not only act, but the way we think about food and our relationship to it. Second component of a declaration: let's cut our dependence on oil by at least a quarter. Simple steps: leave the car at home 1 time a week. Walk, bike, bus, carpool instead. Change all the lighting in your home to energy efficient varieties, CFLs or LEDs. Use fans or natural air instead of AC. Those steps will take us a long way to that 25% goal. Okay? Third step in the declaration: let's get rid of disposables. Let's eliminate them from our homes and from our lives. 3 concrete, specific steps. Start avoiding disposable plates, cups, utensils. Use cloth instead of paper towels. Drink tap water instead of the plastic bottled water. Okay? And the last and most important step of the declaration is just to declare something, to sign it, to start living it privately is not enough. We need to share it with each other. We need to live these statements publicly so others can see, be led by our example, and hold us accountable. Okay? And I've seen this happen. I've seen the power of this happen in Kanu. Kanu started with a handful of people that made commitments to live more sustainably. They shared their stories online. We started to track impacts together. And quickly the momentum grew. People joined each other's commitments. They started to share tips. And now we have a global movement of islanders, 14,000 strong, spread across 300 mainland communities, 20 countries, and all the zip codes, the populated zip codes of the Hawaiian Islands. Okay? So it is possible. It's possible to make that change happen and to lead others by example. Now the action step. This is an opportunity for you to make the declaration today, to start working on this change now. You can text that number, name and email, Go to that website, post your name and a comment. Now, this is not the kind of mechanism where it's just one way, you text in and you never hear back. This is going to be a space for us to connect with each other and share story and hold each other accountable. We're going to check back with each other on our progress and see if a year from now we can have made these changes stick, because that's our declaration. The declaration, again, is going to be about the way we live and not our words. This change is not going to come easy. It's going to require some things of us. It's going to require us to learn new things, like how to grow food instead of lawns. It's going to require us to sacrifice some convenience and learn how to reuse. It's going to require us to live with a little less privacy and seclusion and to connect with our neighbors. And it's going to require us to redefine our dream from this and this and this to something that looks more like this and this and this. The change is not going to be easy, but here's why I believe we can do it. Because we're optimists. And being optimists means that we're not prisoners of our past. We can learn from our past. Yeah? We can expect the best of ourselves despite our record of mistakes. We can expect the best of each other, and we can change. Being optimists gives us that power. And here's the other thing I'll tell you. The change is worth it. It's worth it. It's a simple life that many of us long for. It's a life with less stuff and more relationships. It's a life that's lived closer to each other and to the land, and most importantly, it's a life that's designed for the place we live. It's an island life. Thank you.